Coming to you live from Johannesburg, this is Fridays with Tim Modise. On the show tonight, is the ANC under threat by a Zuma elite ready to replace President Cyril Ramaphosa? Professor Mark Swilling seems to think so. Can the PIC Commission protect the pension fund of government employees? The UDM leader Bantu Holomisa weighs in as the PIC board tenders its resignation. And we ask, is there space for new faces on TV, or can the recycling of old faces be justified? Our panel discussion will be focusing on this, and we'll be sharing thoughts with you. You have to call us, though, 011-759-6340, or using the Twitter hashtag Fridays with Tim Modise. But first, the news. Anli, what are today's main stories?
All right, thank you, Tim. Let's get right into it. We start with tragedy in the Vaal. 3 pupils from Hoërskool Driehoek in Vanderbijl Park won't be returning home from school. They died after a walkway bridge there collapsed. 23 of their classmates were injured and are being treated in hospital. ENC's Yankatol May has more.
It's a painful day. It's a difficult day. It's indeed painful for the leadership of the school to notify these parents that someone they saw this morning happy to come to school, they have to deal with logistics of death.
2 boys and 1 girl were making their way to class when the unthinkable happened. They died when a walkway at the school came crashing down. Over 20 other pupils are now recovering in hospital. Those who were lucky enough to survive are in shock.
In God's mercy, my child survived, but I feel sorry and pain for the parents who lost their kids on this mercy. I don't know what is going to happen because it is trauma. My child did saw everything.
Investigations are now taking place, and it will be some time before answers are forthcoming. And more questions are already being asked. How safe are the children in the school and others across the province?
We would like the Department of Education in Gauteng to conduct a thorough, holistic assessment of school infrastructure in Gauteng across all public and private schools, because this incident should not happen again.
Hoërskool Driehoek will remain closed until further notice, and those affected are receiving counselling. Yankatol May, Johannesburg.
The entire board of Africa's biggest fund manager has thrown in the towel. Members of the PIC board wrote to Finance Minister Tito Mboweni asking to be relieved of their duties. In the letter, signed by all 9 members, including Chairperson and Deputy Finance Minister Mondli Gungubele, they highlight efforts to discredit the board. The members say this has compromised the credibility of their work. The resignations come after the state-owned pension fund issued a statement, including allegations from a whistleblower known only as James Noko. He's accused board member Sibusisiwe Zulu of working with acting chief executive Matsepo More and Gungubile to capture the PIC. Eskom has received a 15 billion rand loan facility. The loan facility is from a consortium of local and international banks. The government-guaranteed facility will form part of the financing of Eskom's current capital expenditure program. Eskom says it has met 95% of its 72 billion rand funding requirement for the 2018-2019 financial year. The remaining 5% will be raised through various funding sources, including domestic debt capital markets. She's promising to sweep her office clean and put justice first. Advocate Shamila Batohi's officially stepped into her new role as head of the troubled NPA. One of her immediate tasks will be to restore the public's eroded trust in the prosecuting authority. ENC's Samkele Maseko has this report.
I returned to the NPA at a time of crisis, not only for the organization, but also for the rule of law in South Africa. Without it, the country is on a slippery slope, and the cancer of impunity festers and grows.
The new National Director of Public Prosecutions seems steadfast in her desire to steer the ship through choppy waters. Advocate Shemela Petoy says she knows people are hungry for justice, as they have every right to be. This includes looking at the names of senior NPA officials mentioned at the state capture inquiry. Petoy is insisting prosecutors cannot be for sale and those without integrity will be rooted out.
Serious allegations have emerged, some old, some new, but all damaging if they are found to have any basis in fact at all. What is emerging is distressing in the extreme and will receive immediate attention from me and my team. I will, as soon as possible, engage with relevant stakeholders, including the team at the Zondo Commission and the head of the SIU, amongst others.
The NPA has been plagued by allegations of political meddling, but the new sheriff in town is saying those days are over.
When I was finally, it was decided that I would be the president's preferred candidate as far as this post is concerned, I did have a conversation with the president, and I said to him that, you know, I know it's guaranteed in the Constitution, but I want you sitting here to give me that assurance. And unhesitatingly, the president said there will be no interference.
Petoy is also saying she'll prioritize violent and gender-based crimes.
There is simply too much to do.
Samkele Masego, Pretoria.
Police are investigating if their colleagues helped two murderers escape from the South Gauteng High Court. A manhunt is underway to find them. This is the second time prisoners awaiting sentencing escaped from this court in less than 2 months. ENC's Linda Kuhle has more.
They could be anywhere on these Johannesburg streets, possibly even further away. Murder convicts 27-year-old Andisile Mbanyelo and 29-year-old Njabulo Thokozani Khumalo have escaped from the South Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg. They were meant to be sentenced on Friday.
It was in the morning when the truck which was coming from Johannesburg prison to bring the prisoners to the court came into court. When they went out of the truck, two suspects escaped from the court.
The escapees are being described as dangerous and people are urged not to engage them.
We are calling for the community in this one to give the information of the whereabouts of the suspects, not to try to apprehend them, as they were here for sentences of murders.
Police are now investigating if any of their members were involved.
We are going to investigate and see if there is there was a hand of one of the members to make sure that those people escape. But what we are saying is that the investigation is on, and we will do all to our powers to make sure that we investigate everything.
Police previously re-arrested prisoners who escaped from this court, and they are confident they can do it again. Lindokuhle Xulu, Johannesburg.
Right, more news coming up at 9 o'clock. Back to you, Tim.
Thank you very much, Anley. Statements made in Davos by the Finance Minister Tito Mboweni as well as the President Cyril Ramaphosa that South Africa went through 9 wasted years ignited a response from former President Jacob Zuma that a lot was achieved in that period and that the criticisms leveled at him may undermine the ANC at the elections. Other commentators and political analysts, including Mark Swilling, believe that Zuma is working on a strategy to make a comeback to ANC leadership by replacing the current leader, Cyril Ramaphosa. Professor Mark Swilling joins me to discuss all these developments, and he's joining me from Cape Town. Thank you, Prof, for joining me this evening.
Evening, Tim.
What is your view of the Zuma response to the comments that the past 9 years were wasted years under his leadership?
Well, of course, it's unsurprising. He would want to defend himself, but I think that's part of a comeback strategy.
which you have commented about when you say part of a comeback strategy. But let me stay with the remarks that he made. He cited a number of things that he believes will show that a lot was done under his government. He spoke about the HIV/AIDS programs. He spoke about the National Development Policy, and he spoke about free university education as some of the highlights of his career. But he did not say much about the performance of the economy.
Well, you know, of course, that's really the biggest challenge that we have. When he came to power, there were major challenges in the economy which were not resolved during the Mbeki era. And under Zuma, the strategy shifted towards using the procurement spend of state-owned enterprises in order to build a black industrial class. It's not such a bad idea, but it set the framework for what we now call state capture, because the procurement process was corrupted.
And also in his remarks...
And that had major implications on the economy.
Sure, and in his remarks, the former President Zuma is suggesting that he was not alone, that people were involved with him, and I think he's pointing the finger at the current president, because he was there as the deputy president anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's going to be a hallmark of the strategy, which is to point out that a whole bunch of people who are currently part of Ramaphosa's restoration program, which is based on the argument that we've had 9 wasted years, there are quite a number of people who are part of that restoration program, and why didn't they speak up? So that's what many people asked during the Zuma years, and cleverly that's what Zuma is now suggesting.
And in your article where you talk about the Zumification or the comeback strategy of the Zuma clique to take over the ANC, you write that the Zuma-centered power elite mounted a silent coup in 2009 to repurpose state institutions. What do you mean by that?
Well, the argument is that state capture is not just about corruption. State capture is a political project mounted by a power elite that seized control of key state institutions, in particular state-owned enterprises like Transnet and Eskom, but also key institutions in the security cluster, the criminal justice system, and so on and so forth, SARS, in order to repurpose them and redirect financial flows to the benefit of a particular network of elites that were connected to the Zuma-Gupta families. But now what's emerging in the Zondo Commission, there were other centers of power, like Bosasa and the Watsons. So our argument in the Betrayal of the Promise report, which came out in 2017, was this amounted to a silent coup, because the key decisions were being made by the Zuma elite rather than the ANC National Executive Committee.
You know, sometimes when we discuss matters affecting the state, we conflate what is going on within the ANC and that which is going on within the state. And sometimes we try very hard to separate the two.
Yes.
That the ANC is the ANC and the state is something else. Now, if there is a strategy on the part of the former President Zuma and his clique to take over, surely they will have to start with the ANC and not the state. That's not possible.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was an internal transformation of the ANC, what is being referred to as the provincialization of the ANC. So under Mandela, it was a national political force. But during the Zuma years, there was a rapid inclusion of a large number of politicians from local government and provincial government, and the construction of these provincial party bosses like Ace Magashule and David Mabuza and so on. And that has weakened the ANC as a national political force and made it compliant in what happened during the Zuma years. The real challenge now is to rebuild. The ANC leadership faces, the current leadership faces the challenge of rebuilding the ANC as a national political force, which is key in order to rebuild a developmental state, which is what is referred to in the National Development Plan. So that's really the political challenge facing the current leadership. I don't think you can drive such a big wedge between the party and the state. There is an interaction, and there always has been. And you can't really capture one without the other.
But then how do you separate the two groups? There may be more, but the centers of influence between the Jacob Zuma cabal or clique and the Cyril Ramaphosa cabal or clique or group. I mean, you're talking about a strategy, a comeback on the part of that clique that was led by President Jacob Zuma. What are the features thereof, and how separate and different is it from the one that is under the influence of the current leader, Cyril Ramaphosa?
Well, I mean, under the Zuma years, there was an ideology of radical economic transformation. There was a concerted effort to use the state-owned enterprises and procurement spend, and the focus was building a black industrial class. And the ANC, the Zuma leadership had a lot of support. They lost the vote in the ANC conference in Nasrec by a very small margin. The alternative grouping under Cyril Ramaphosa has focused on cleaning up the mess left behind by state capture and the meltdown and decomposition of a lot of state-owned enterprises, which has emerged from 28 different inquiries and investigations that have taken place during 2017 and 2018, affecting a large number of institutions. But economically, Ramaphosa has re-established the compact with the major corporations and CEOs, and is giving a much greater emphasis to foreign direct investment than what took place during the Zuma years, where the focus was on the state-owned enterprises. So there is quite a lot of there are quite a lot of differences. I mean, the Zuma group also built a populist language, and they continue to use that language in order to mobilize the grassroots and discredit the Zondo Commission and many of the other commissions of inquiry and investigations that have been taking place that are revealing state capture in all its gory detail.
All right, let's talk to one of our viewers, Sekhale, who is on the line from Rustenburg. Sekhale, welcome.
Hi, hi, Tim. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Good evening. Go ahead.
Tim, I just want to comment on the years under the Zuma administration.
Go ahead.
I think the country faces very serious challenges, and my view is that what the President Cyril Ramaphosa said about wasted years, I think it's an appreciation. It's an appreciation that, yes, we were in government. Yes, we participated in the leadership of the country, and of course there were challenges and problems. But we now want to turn the tide, because we must accept that under the Zuma administration, corruption metastasized to such levels, uncontrollable levels, to a point where governance in all institutions collapsed.
All right, Sekhale from Rustenburg, thank you very much. And Mark Swilling, I want to pick up one point. You said we should not underestimate the influence or potential influence of Russia in this fight back or comeback strategy that you wrote about. You know, to what extent should we be concerned, worried about the influence of Russia in South Africa's affairs, particularly the infighting within the ANC?
I think we should be very, very, very concerned. Russia has got a very clearly well-documented global strategy, and the construction of nuclear power plants in many countries around the world is a clear part of that strategy, especially since 2007, when Putin issued a directive to integrate all the nuclear capacities built during the Cold War. Russian nuclear power stations are a hybrid of a military base and an embassy. They're not just power stations. And there was a deal, a signed deal between Zuma and Putin to build a fleet of nuclear power stations in South Africa, with the South African state providing a guarantee so the Russians could finance it. and the High Court ruled against that, declaring that agreement illegal. And that was the end of the nuclear deal, or the first phase at least. And subsequently, as Zuma lost the leadership, and the Russians were very, very upset about that. The Russians are not going to give up. They still need this nuclear deal. And like they are involved in many other countries, including powerful nations like the US, they are present. Russian intelligence was very active in the presidency. And we now know that also Neil Barnard was working for the presidency. So there are weird linkages and sinister moves. So I don't think we should assume we've seen the backs of the Russians and the Russian nuclear deal.
Let's cast our eyes into the future. Next week, the president will be presenting the State of the Nation address, and of course, he's also putting some final touches to his election strategy. How is he going to polish, first, the ANC image going into the election, and second, what are the key issues that you think he needs to address next week to give us confidence that he is redirecting the country's future?
The most important issue to emphasize is the need for an economic policy that is going to be an alternative to the free market-oriented policies under Mbeki and the state procurement, state capture policies, radical economic transformation under Zuma. Cyril Ramaphosa has to strike a balance between the need for structural transformation that is going to be redistributive and economic growth. And unfortunately, at the moment, we don't really have an economic policy. The Minister of Finance has convened a group of economists which has started work on that, but we still haven't seen the document. So the best thing that could happen is, prior to the State of the Nation address, we actually have a glimpse of what South Africa's national economic policy is going to be. To rely on the National Development Plan is not good enough. State capture was an economic strategy, and it had disastrous consequences for our country. We need an alternative, and it needs to be an alternative that is informed by a broad range of stakeholders and not overly influenced by the CEOs.
Thank you very much, Mark Swelling, for talking to us this evening. We appreciated your time. In a moment, we'll be talking to the UDM leader, General Bantu Holomisa.